Welcome back into the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel. My name is Lucas Wenzel, and today we are talking 5 running backs with insane upside to potentially finish as a running back 1 this year. We saw it last year with Tony Pollard, Cordero Patterson, and James Conner in 2021. So who is that group of running backs that has the upside to potentially crack the top 12 running backs this year? Let's not waste any more time, though, and dive right on into these players, starting with James Conner. We're going to start with the lowest ADP and work our way up towards the top. He currently goes off the board as a running back 27. And I'm going to be honest, I feel like I'm on an island by myself with James Conner here. People are concerned with a multitude of factors, and they're all 100% legit. Like, I totally understand. He's still not an efficient runner. There's an entirely new coaching staff in town, and those tendencies could change on offense. James Conner hasn't been the healthiest player throughout his career. There's still a pretty big injury risk there. No Kyler Murray for the first chunk of the season. And the Cardinals, they're just going to suck this year, okay? Like, I won't put that lightly. But need I remind you all that the Cardinals were 4-13 last year? It's not like they were any good last year. I just want to debunk that argument right away. This Cardinals team already wasn't good last year. And sure, Kyler Murray, he'll be gone for the first chunk of the season. He won't be around to help fuel this offense, but even without Kyler Murray, James Conner has been so insanely good. This is all in PPR formats. Last year without Kyler, in weeks 10 and 11, and then 14 through 17, Kyler wasn't active. James Conner averaged 19.5 fantasy points per game in those games. In a bad offense, led by Colt McCoy, need I remind you, who isn't that great of a quarterback, 19.5 fantasy points per game. From week 10 on, he averaged 19.8 fantasy points per game. That was the running back 2. He was pretty good. He was pretty good the second half of the season. Then you throw in, let's go back to 2021 too, because Kyler missed 3 games that year as well. James Conner averaged 21.5 fantasy points per game in those 3 games. We're talking about a dude who averaged 20 fantasy points per game without Kyler Murray over the past 2 years. Let me repeat. 20 fantasy points per game without Kyler Murray over the last 2 years. I'm not concerned. There's plenty of upside still here with James Conner. He's been a top 10 running back in fantasy points per game the last 2 years. He was 8th in opportunity share last year. Tell me who's going to change that this year for James Conner? Keontae Ingram, who they had every opportunity to use last year and they didn't. Corey Clement? No. DeAndre Hopkins isn't in town anymore. So who's going to chip into that opportunity share? Nobody. James Conner could easily be top 10 in opportunity share again this year. His 17-game pace last year, if you're concerned about the receiving game at all, his 17-game pace was 76 targets last year. That would have been 7th amongst running backs. I am just so not concerned because this Cardinals team will be throwing the ball plenty. Sure, the scoring opportunities might be down, but James Conner can continue to keep his value elevated based on receiving work too. So there's just so much upside to be had at the running back 27 off the board. And like, I firmly believe the opportunity is going to be there for James Conner, despite it being a bad offense. He's the second best weapon. It's Hollywood Brown and James Conner. No disrespect to Rondale Moore, Michael Wilson, any of those other dudes, but James Conner's the second best option in an offense that's going to have the ball in their hands a ton because they're going to be playing from behind in most of their games this year. So I absolutely love James Conner. He totally deserves to be on this list of potentially cracking the top 12 running backs this year, especially since he's done it in fantasy points per game the past 2 years. Let's move on to the next player, though. I'm slowly coming around on Cam Akers. He goes off the board as the running back 21 right now. Obviously, pretty abysmal start to last year, okay? He obviously got benched in that Thursday night football game against the Bills to kick off the season. He was then publicly being shopped through literally pretty much almost the entire season until week 13. From week 13 through the end of the season, weeks 13 through 18, he was the running back 4 overall. He had 512 rushing yards. That led the league. He was averaging 4.9 yards per carry. Remind you, this is year fresh off of Achilles. Like, that's pretty dang good. 6 rushing touchdowns. That was tied for first with Austin Eckler. He was first in yards after contact, tied for third in broken tackles. Like, Cam Akers went out and potentially won you your league last year after he sat on waiver wires for like a good chunk of the season. That explosiveness fresh off like the year after your Achilles, like that's impressive. And Akers is now potentially set to be a workhorse again this year. I kind of want to pump the brakes on that because I do think Sean McVay probably wants to have more of a committee approach. But you just look at the competition on the team though. Like Kyren Williams didn't beat him out for touches when he was the guy weeks 13 through 18. Like Kyren Williams didn't compete that much. Rookie Zach Evans, I've heard some people feel that he's competition. Dude was a 6th round pick. He lost his starting job at Ole Miss. As a college player, he lost his starting job. And like, do we really think he has what it takes to chip into a sizable amount of a proven NFL running back in Cam Akers' work? Like, I don't buy that. Sony Michel, they signed him. I'm not going to be surprised if he gets cut by the start of the season. Like, this high-powered Rams offense is going to be back and healthy, good to go as well. You get Stafford and cut back. Like, there's going to be more scoring opportunities for Akers there as well. Like, I'm really starting to come around on Cam Akers for this year. A lot of it has to do with the immense upside he possesses. And, like, let's be honest, he certainly not out of the realm of possibilities. He finishes as a top 12 guy this year when the season is all said and done. So I think Cam Akers is sneaky one of those guys. If Sean McVay gives him the role, he proved it at the end of last year that he can be a top 12 guy. Just has to be the longevity of the entire season there. So he's one of those guys that I think possesses massive upside going into 2023. Let's move on to our next guy, Alexander Mattison. He goes off the board as the running back 19 right now. Look, we've all seen the graphics, the tweets of how good he's been when Dalvin Cook has missed time, right? And 4 missed games in 2021. Mattison, he was in week 3, he was the running back 7. Week 5, he was the running back 6. Week 13, he was the running back 8. And in week 16, he was the running back 13. Look, 3 of those 4 weeks, he was a top 12 running back, right? But this is a different system. And I'm also not saying Alexander Mattison is a one-for-one replacement with Dalvin Cook, because that's also what we're assuming by saying Mattison has this immense, top 10 upside. He's not a one-for-one replacement of Dalvin, but when you look at some of Dalvin's metrics from last year in a new Kevin O'Connell-led offense, like Alexander Madison's role could actually be bigger than we expect. In 2022, Dalvin was 5th in snap share. He was 9th in weighted opportunities. He was 6th in carries. And Minnesota was 28th in team run plays per game. That discrepancy there screams that Dalvin was the guy last year. And if Alexander Mattison steps into being the guy, he could actually be in for a lot more carries than we're expecting. He was 2nd in routes run, Dalvin was last year, and he was 10th in total touchdown. So I actually think the role for Alexander Mattison might be larger than we want to give him credit for. Yes, they have Ty Chandler, Kenny Nwangwu, Dwayne McBride, who they just drafted as well, albeit in the 7th round. I don't think he's the guy you want. I think you would rather have Ty Chandler or Kenny Nwangwu. But we're talking about Alexander Mattison and the upside he possesses. Based on those numbers, he could easily be a top 12 running back this year. If Kevin O'Connell makes him the guy, gets him involved in the passing attack, has him running as many routes as Dalvin Cook did, and if he falls into the end zone 10 plus times, we could be looking at a guy that could finish as a top 12 running back this year. We've seen this Minnesota offense in the past produce top 12 running backs. Dalvin Cook was for many years. Again, not a one-for-one replacement with Alexander Mattison to Dalvin Cook, but if we're talking upside, the upside is certainly there for Alexander Mattison to finish as a top 12 running back this year. Let's move on. Number 4, J.K. Dobbins. Look, we know how talented this dude is, right? He just can't stay on the football field. 6 yards per carry his rookie year, 5.7 yards per carry in 8 games last year. He was 3rd in breakaway run rate, 2nd in juke rate, 5.7 yards per touch. Those were all top 10 metrics. He was injured in week 7 to 13, but then you look from week 14 on when he came back, the dude didn't miss a beat. He was averaging 7 yards a tote. He had 7 rushes of 20-plus yards. That was second to only Derrick Henry. He was 1st in rushing yards with 397. And out of all running backs with 20-plus attempts during that stretch, Dobbins was 6th in yards after contact per attempt. He did not go down. And he did all that while only being 15th in rushing attempts. So despite Greg Roman running at a molasses pace, not giving J.K. Dobbins a ton of rushing opportunities, not an absurd amount of rushing opportunities, Dobbins was crazy efficient and crazy good last year. Now, Greg Roman isn't there anymore. So Todd Monken, now the offensive coordinator in town. What does this actually mean for J.K. Dobbins? We hear all the time that Todd Monken is going to run a more up-tempo offense, and up-tempo is relative, right? When you run at a molasses place like Greg Roman, anything is up-tempo, right? So Todd Monken, he is going to improve the pace. He's going to quicken the pace of this offense. But what does that actually mean for J.K. Dobbins? Like, let's contextualize that a little bit. Tom Monken, he was at Georgia, right? A lot of success there. But before he went back to Georgia, these were the three running backs that he worked with in the NFL prior to him returning to college. Nick Chubb in 2019, Peyton Barber in 2018 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then he worked with Doug Martin in 2016 and 2017 with the Bucs as well. Now, here are their opportunity shares in each of those seasons. Doug Martin in 8 games in 2016, he had a 67.2% opportunity share. That was 14th best. 2018 with Peyton Barber, 68.5% opportunity share. That was 9th. Then you have Nick Chubb in 2019, 73.3% opportunity share. That was 8th. If Peyton Barber, let me repeat, if Peyton Barber can get a top 10 opportunity share with Todd Monken, I have very few doubts that J.K. Dobbins can be top 10 in opportunity share this year with Todd Monken. He is very clearly the best running back on that team. That is no disrespect to Gus Edwards. I love me a little Gus bus in best ball if you're shooting late round. But this is about J.K. Dobbins. If Peyton Barber can get a top 10 opportunity share with Todd Monken, J.K. Dobbins can as well. There is no reason why he can't. All that really remains to be seen here is if Dobbins can be 100% healthy. And if he is, he could certainly be the next top 12 running back breakout. He just has to find the end zone. And if Todd Monken ups the pace of this offense, gives J.K. Dobbins that workload, that could lead to more scoring opportunities, and J.K. Dobbins can find himself in the end zone more often. So J.K. Dobbins certainly deserves to be on this list of insane upside running backs going off the board as a running back 18. Last one. Probably my favorite player that we're going to talk about here. Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs goes off the board as a running back 13 of the Detroit Lions. I get people are concerned with David Montgomery being there. I totally get it. Dan Campbell has said he wants his Alvin Kamara, though. Now, I want to take us back to Alvin Kamara's rookie year in New Orleans, where he finished as the running back 3 in PPR formats. The running back 2 on that team, Mark Ingram, he finished as the running back 6 that year. Now, I'm not put 1-to-1 New Orleans, Alvin Kamara's rookie year and Detroit Lions this year. I'm not trying to synonymously say those are exactly the same, but let's compare those metrics because it's not impossible for Mark Ingram, for David Montgomery in this Lions offense to get a majority of the work and Jahmyr Gibbs to still outperform him fantasy-wise. So we look at Alvin Kamara's rookie season in 2017. 120 attempts for 721 and 8 touchdowns. He had 100 targets, 81 receptions for 826 yards and 5 touchdowns. Pretty good numbers. So the wide assumption now is that that Jahmyr Gibbs, is taking over the DeAndre Swift role in this Detroit Lions offense, right? Swift's 17-game pace last year was 85 targets, and he did that while playing only 40% or more of snaps in 3 games. Let me repeat that. 17-game pace of 85 targets last year, despite only playing 40% or more of snaps 3 times. Jahmyr Gibbs could easily see 85 targets this year. So let's combine those two together now. You have Alvin Kamara's rookie year rushing attempts of 120, 85 targets. Since 2017, all running backs with those numbers, 85 plus targets and at least 120 rushing attempts, have finished top 10 in total fantasy points. Now, let's talk about Jahmyr Gibbs' draft capital because that's good news. Let's move on to his draft capital. The last 5 running backs drafted with a top 12 pick in the NFL draft, Todd Gurley in 2015, Ezekiel Elliott in 2016. You had Fournette and McCaffrey in 2017, and then Saquon Barkley in 2018. We haven't had any in the top 12 since Saquon Barkley. We had 2 this past year. Now, this is where they all finished in fantasy football their rookie seasons those years that they were drafted. So Todd Gurley in 2015, after he was drafted, running back 7. Ezekiel Elliott in 2016, he was the running back 2. Leonard Fournette, the running back 8. Christian McCaffrey, the running back 11. Saquon Barkley, the running back 2. Alex Caruso, friend of the channel, put together a great tweet displaying all that. You can go follow him at Alex Caruso on Twitter. But look, considering everything that I just mentioned, the upside is 1,000% there for Jahmyr Gibbs to have a top 12, if not even a top 7 finish this year, a top 8 finish this year. All those running backs that I mentioned, only Christian McCaffrey didn't finish inside of the top 10 or inside of the top 8. It is 1,000% possible for Jahmyr Gibbs to have a phenomenal rookie season. Of course, there is downside. You're splitting with David Montgomery. He could get a bulk of the goal line work. Jahmyr Gibbs might not score 13 total touchdowns. But Dan Campbell has familiarity with how that offense works down in New Orleans. He could easily make both of these dudes work, and I think he wants to if you're going to spend top 12 draft capital on Jahmyr Gibbs. It has to work. That's all I got for you. Those are our 5 insane running backs, or 5 running backs with insane upside for fantasy football in 2023 that could potentially finish as the next running back one. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, make sure you do that. We're coming out with YouTube videos, podcasts, shorts daily on the channel, and turn on those notifications so you know when those videos come up. We'll be back later this week with an episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast and 5 wide receivers with insane upside going into 2023. Again, thanks for tuning in. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter. You can go follow me there. Make sure you subscribe, and we will see you all later this week. Deuces.